The music industry is a place where everyone's in a state of panic about how to keep kids interested in pop music constantly. As such, since pretty much the beginning of video games, executives have been trying to force pop stars into them, even if they were working in an era where sound and graphics were unable to either feature pop stars' likenesses or any of their music. The results have been a few good games, but also some of the worst games ever made, with some of the strongest
"How do you do, fellow kids?"
vibes of any media. The world of pop star cash-in games is huge. In this video, I want to give you an introduction to the topic with 10 games that represent the entire history of pop star games from the 80s to today. This includes bizarre beat-em-ups, random rhythm games, and whatever the hell the Spice Girls game is supposed to be. Some games some real love went into, and other games are the Spice Girls game. Let's get into them, shall we? There are few people you would less expect to be digital pioneers than Shakin Stevens, a man who became famous in the 1980s with a series of covers from the early rock and roll era and before it. And yet, buyers who'd made it to the end of his 6th album The Bop Won't Stop on cassette were met with a message.
This is Shaky. If you've got a Sinclair Spectrum 48K computer, why don't you try my game?
Also contained within the cassette sleeve was instructions to connect your cassette recorder to a ZX Spectrum in order to play the Shaky game. Loading up the game reveals a message from Shaky himself asking you to help him reach the old house of vampires before his fuel runs out, avoiding vampires all the while. Reach his house quickly enough and you might make the top 10. A little bit of Shakin Stevens lore here. This Old House is the name of his first UK #1 single, released in 1981. It's a cover of a track made famous by George Clooney's aunt Rosemary Clooney in 1954. Again, it's so weird that this is the guy they decided to make a video game for. What follows is a game where you have to manoeuvre Shaky through a series of concentric squares, avoiding a series of enemies. All the while, a sound that I can only describe as a Dalek orgasming plays. Succeed and you get a crude pixelated version of Shaky congratulating you. Well, technically he doesn't congratulate you, you just get a very matter-of-fact, you're at the old house. At least if you die you get a little sympathy from Shakin Pixels, who says, "Oh dear, a bat bit you." A little more Shakin Stevens lore here, bats and vampires are not part of the Shaky image. That's original game IP. Some have noticed definite similarities between this game and Head On, a 1979 Sega arcade game where you drive a car across a track trying to collect dots and avoiding the computer-controlled car. All in all then, the project has strong, "Is this it? Is this what the kids like?" vibes. They've taken a 4-year-old game, vaguely made it relevant to a Shakin Stevens song and banged it onto a cassette in the hope there are enough video gamers who are shy Shakin Stevens fans that they'll sell a few thousand more copies. This is basically the path that all future pop star video games would take, and the games would only get slightly more advanced as the decades went on. Few, however, would give you as complete a game as our next entry. Issue 36 of Computer and Video Games in October 1984 came with a freebie, a 7-inch record by contemporary new wave band Thompson Twins, best known to me for featuring no twins and nobody called Thompson. In case you didn't notice, it read inside, attached to the front of your favourite computer games magazine is a fantastic flexi disc with a great programme imprinted in its grooves. In theory, you could connect your turntable straight to your games console and load the game. Every video I've seen of someone trying to do this, however, they failed and had to record it onto a cassette first. Once you had finally got it to work, you were met with a text game with some of the most cutting-edge graphics 1984 could offer. Imagine CFAX had a hot, steamy night of passion with MS Paint with no protection, and this would be the love child. The disc was made to promote their latest release, Doctor Doctor, and like the Shaky game before it, it takes vague inspiration from that track. Joe, Alana and Tom from the band, or rather blocky chess pieces representing them, are tasked with finding a series of objects to give to a witch doctor who lives on the top of a mountain accessed only by cable car. Unlike the Shaky game, this might actually give you more minutes of fun than the game takes to load. If wandering around looking for objects and sometimes digging for them is your idea of fun, this is the game for you. A YouTube walkthrough of the game took one retro gamer who knew exactly where all the objects were hidden 20 minutes to complete, which compared to some games we'll talk about, makes it practically open world. But could pop stars appear in a game that was decent enough that people would actually spend money on it? One band was determined to find out. On the surface, Frankie Goes to Hollywood were a weird choice for a video game for kids. By the time this game was released, the Liverpool band had spent the last year caught in controversy with songs like Relax, an ode to preventing premature ejaculation with a video set at an orgy, and Two Tribes, a song about nuclear Armageddon whose promo saw Reagan wrestling. Although game developers resisted the chance to make an orgy simulator or a world leaders wrestling game, this game shows that they thought more about the band at the centre of the game than the previous entries in this list. Perhaps because, unlike the other games, this wasn't a freebie on another product, this game had to be something Frankie fans paid their hard-earned money for. You play a walking version of the band's logo, tasked with building your score across 4 attributes based on the themes of the first 4 Frankie singles: sex, war, love, and faith. Fill all 4 bars and you are ready to ascend to the Pleasure Dome, the location that gives the band's first album its name. Part of the way to build your score is by playing a series of strange mini-games that see you collecting flowers, protecting the band's native Liverpool from an aerial bombardment, or playing as the head of Ronald Reagan shooting pellets at a Russian communist leader. Other elements of the game take less inspiration from the band. The player traverses a series of suburban terraced houses, all empty except for one hungry cat and a dead body whose killer you have to find by eliminating suspects via a series of clues. Mrs. Straight likes to sleep until noon, the killer likes to gamble, etc. The game is that strange thing, a Popstar tie-in game that was well reviewed at the time and remains well regarded by Commodore fans for its strange atmosphere, unique gameplay, and killer soundtrack. If only other game developers had taken inspiration from the success of the Frankie game, but alas. 6 years is a long time in video game development terms, and Michael Jackson's Moonwalker takes full advantage of it. For one, the 32-bit graphics mean that for the first time we get a player character who actually resembles the artists themselves. This is a character who looks, and crucially, moves like Michael Jackson, dressed in his outfit from the Smooth Criminal video. There is something immensely charming about disarming enemies through the pure magic of dance alone, as you explore a series of terrains looking to save a number of children per level. Or, more specifically, the same child again and again, the kid from the movie version of Moonwalker who has a terrible habit of always finding herself behind doors, in bins, and in open graves. Though the game was first released in arcades, it is the home console version that is the most charming. In its boss stages, players can unlock a move that forces the hordes of goons to literally dance or die. It would take a heart of stone not to enjoy a pack of dogs dancing to a chiptune version of Thriller, even if I could do without MJ positioning himself as the saviour of children. Just when the game's charms start to get repetitive, a final level sees you turn into a Mecha Michael before heading into space for a final intergalactic battle. If you were a child Jacko fan in the early 90s, I imagine you would have been ecstatic at playing this game. I personally find it very exciting to think of my favourite pop stars as superheroes after a formative viewing of the Spice Force 5 segment from Spice World the movie, so I imagine the chance to play as this version of the 80s icon was thrilling. This arcade beat-em-up was a perfect mass-market sort of game for the man who gave us the biggest-selling album of all time. But one of his great 80s creative rivals would give us something much weirder. In 1994, Prince, or Mr. Love Symbol, or the artist formerly known as Prince, depending on your point of view, wanted to do anything creative he could as long as it didn't involve making music for Warner, the record company he was having a very public feud with. One of the projects he spent his time on was Prince Interactive, which in a weirder, more fun world would have been the future of music. You crash land at what a head in a bowl tells you is the dawn, the hangout of the new power generation. There you have to solve puzzles to collect 5 pieces of Prince's symbol, unearthing plenty of treasures along the way. Though the game is blocky as hell, in that mid-90s computer game way that's now immensely charming, Prince fans are getting plenty of content to reward their exploration, including 6 new songs, 4 music videos, and dozens of song and video clips. Plus, you get a free temporary tattoo with every box. Musical treats are lurking behind every corner. Click on the records that line the wall and get songs. Click on paintings and get songs. Open doors and get, well, holographic women with urgent messages for you. In short, the game is a pretty good encapsulation of what I think it would be like to live in Prince's head, and it's a sexy, strange place to be. Honestly, bring back the CD-ROM era. All these singular, strange pieces of software are such a tonic to the corporate homogenization of the world. The Prince game is what happens when you let a strange genius loose on a new technology. But what if a game is left to someone who puts money over creating a quality game? Well, you end up with... The Spice Girls took brand and band partnerships to a whole new level at the end of the 1990s. Young fans of ginger, baby, scary, sporty and posh could spice up their entire lives through a range of products, from Spice Girls homewares to food to clothes to electronics. British supermarket Asda even released a Spice-themed calendar in 1997, offering over 40 girl power-infused products. Into that climate came the Spice Girls video game, featuring all 5 members, but released a month after Jerry had left the band. The Spice World movie the prior year gave video game makers plenty to work with. They could have given us a platformer, or a fighting game featuring the Spice Force 5, or perhaps a driving game featuring Victoria careering the Spice Bus through the streets of London. However, game makers were worried that Spice Girls fans were mostly young girls who didn't really play video games. You may think the obvious response to this was, well, don't make a Spice Girls game then, but the blinding green colour of potential money to be made stopped anyone from having this thought. And so the result was one of the worst reviewed games of all time. Not that it really is a game. The game makers were inspired by Parappa the Rapper, a rhythm game featuring everyone's favourite K9 MC spitting beats as users pressed increasingly fast button combinations. If the developers had just ripped off that game entirely and given us a Spice Girls rhythm game that sees the Spices try to learn their songs and dance moves, this could have been solid. But they stripped away anything that makes Parappa fun. There is no way to win, or indeed score any points. I spent a lot of time playing this as a child, and a lot of that time was spent trying to work out exactly what it was I was supposed to do, or whether there was an extra part of this game that I was missing. There wasn't. First you arrange Spice songs into remixes, but with not enough options to make genuinely new versions of the songs. Then you get to choreograph a dance by pressing the buttons on screen, but there's no way of doing well or badly. Then you control a series of cameras to film the dance you've just choreographed, and that's it. You're rewarded with a 20-minute video interview with the Spice Girls, which to be fair, I watched again and again. And also to be fair, the vibes of the game are fairly immaculate. A playthrough of the game would make an amazing video backdrop to a gay bar pop party of my dreams. And it's the first game we've talked about that really manages to make genuinely cool avatars of each band member. But this all pales into comparison compared to what a massive disappointment this barely a game was. Especially as it came out the same year as the first Dance Dance Revolution arcade game. A Spice Girls Dance Mat game with these exact vibes would have been my entire personality. But it was not to be. We'll find out whether this represents the nadir of Popstar games, or whether cynical games designers realised from the success of this game that they could just put a Popstar's face onto any old crappy game and sell it to a gullible public. How egregious the Spice Girls game is highlighted by the next game in this list. It's not like pop music loving kids want the moon, we just want a vaguely playable game. And Britney's Dance Beat does everything it wouldn't have been difficult for Spice World to do. It's a competitive dance game where you're fighting with other dancers at a series of auditions to go on tour with Britney, represented by a digital avatar with the dead eyes of the PlayStation 2 era. Earn enough points and you earn backstage passes, which unlock behind-the-scenes footage from Britney's recent tour. Unlock even more points, and you can watch what the game calls immersive videos, which are the game's coolest feature. Britney's tour performances have been shot on a 360-degree camera, meaning as she performs you can move the directional buttons and explore the stage. It's 360 VR 10 years too early, and it's so cool. Have the team behind the game changed us a little? Sure. It would have been nice to have more than 5 songs and more than 5 characters to play, plus the chance to unlock Britney if you pass all the auditions. It would have also been great to have Britney in a different outfit in each section, rather than the same I'm a slave for you rap top. But as it is, there is just enough content that if I was a tween with a PlayStation 2, I would have played this game for hours. Wait a minute, I was a tween with a PlayStation 2. While I take my mum to task for never buying me this, here's our next entry. If your mum knew one thing about rap music in 2004, it's that it was corrupting her innocent child with its lyrics of sex, drugs, violence, and plenty of darn cussing. If she knew 2 things about rap music, it's that those rappers were always fighting. As gangster rap became a defining genre, how street tough a rapper was became a major part of their brand. Teens were attracted by the fact that Jay-Z and Snoop Dogg had sold drugs on the street, and that 50 Cent got shot 9 times. And so it became perhaps inevitable that somebody would make a rap fighting game. Celebrity fighting games were nothing new by the 2000s. Mike Tyson had his own fighting game as far back as 1987, the Wu-Tang Clan had one in 1999, and 2003 gave us Celebrity Deathmatch, a universally criticised game that gave players the opportunity to give Marilyn Manson or NSYNC a beatdown. The Def Jam games, however, had an advantage over these previous efforts. The depth of their record company's roster meant they could offer a huge array of acts as playable characters. Their first game, Def Jam Vendetta, offered a dozen or so rappers, like Ludacris, DMX and Redman, but the sequel offered over 40, including Flavor Flav, Lil Kim and Busta Rhymes, alongside non-rappers like Carmen Electra, Henry Rollins from Black Flag, and model Kimora Lee Simmons, all with multiple fighting styles to choose from. Not only that, but players can unlock these players' signature jewellery, as well as in-game equivalents of real-life clothes from Reebok, Nike and Diddy's label Sean John, and dozens of songs from luminaries like LL Cool J, Outkast and Public Enemy. Perhaps it's no surprise that it was a rap game, coming out as that genre's relationship to bling was firmly established, that would give us a popstar cashing game most fully packed with celebrities, music and intellectual property. It was even a genuine critical hit, receiving solid 8 out of 10s in nearly all of the major gaming publications. It even won Best Fighting Game at the E3 Game Critics Awards in 2004. Aside from the gameplay of Fight for NY, what is interesting about this game is that it is the last artifact of a music label being supremely confident in itself. The music industry was still being buoyed by years of physical sales, so still had the money to branch out on games this full of thought and care. However, 2004 was also an era where the industry had its head in the sand, ignoring the move away from the physical world and into the digital age. As such, the next few years are more defined by scrappy little experiments, put out by panicked industry desperately asking its customers, "Is this what you want?" And for me, no game has these vibes stronger than the next one we're going to talk about. Entire books have been written about what a toxic time the 2000s were for women in general and celebrity women specifically. But if you want one example that sums up the whole awful era, let it be Celebrity Girl Fight. In the mid-2000s, Flash games were a quick and relatively inexpensive way to promote music, so the team at Virgin made one for their new signing, Houston R&B act Brooke Valentine. The track was called Girl Fight, a tribute to all the ladies that got beef with another bitch. And so what better than a female fighting game? And even better, why not try and generate some buzz by having Brooke fight some other female R&B acts? And doubly better, let's tap into the online hatred of Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan and have them in the game as well. Sure, the whole thing could be read as an ironic commentary on the nature of fame. After all, Brooke Valentine's music would have to fight to be heard over that of Beyoncé and Ciara, so why not make the process literal? The problem is that ironic violence against women is still violence against women. If the sight of female pop stars getting slowly beaten and bloody was funny then, it certainly wasn't funny by the end of the decade when the whole internet saw that picture of Rihanna after being assaulted by then boyfriend Chris Brown. By the 2010s, video game makers had a brainwave they should have had decades ago. Why are we crowbarring pop stars into action-adventure games? Why don't we make games featuring pop stars that are actually based on their music? Oh, Britney's Dance Beat, the before-your-time queen you are. Once karaoke games like SingStar and instrument-based games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band became a success, it was only a matter of time before we got ones dedicated to single bands. Sure, pretending your favourite star was a superhero was fun, but was it as fun as being in the Beatles or being the lead singer of ABBA? Around the same time, the iPhone, with its touchscreen and inbuilt accelerometers, was making app-based gaming a thing. What a few years ago would have been a free Flash game were now available on the App Store for a few pounds or less. This quickly became a huge business. By 2012, for example, Angry Birds had been downloaded 1.7 billion times. One of the biggest games of that early app era was Tap Tap Revenge, which was basically Guitar Hero for your phone. Balls would come down a series of rails towards you, and you had to tap them as they entered your rings at the bottom of the screen, while tracks like Katy Perry's Hot and Cold, Daft Punk's Technologic, and Kaiser Chief's Never Miss a Beat played. We're just going to move on from the phrase entered your rings without commenting any further. The game was named by Apple as the best-selling free game of the year, and was named the best time sync application by TechCrunch in 2008. It was only a matter of time before we got a version featuring just the music of a single act, but few were probably expecting it to be industrial rock band 9 Inch Nails. But in October 2008, goths with time to kill on their phones could spend 99p for 9 Inch Nails Revenge, allowing them to tap to their heart's content to songs from the band's recent albums The Slip and Ghosts 1 through 4. Considering some of the lurid things that have been in 9 Inch Nails videos prior, the backdrops in this game are quite restrained, with nary a pig's head to be seen, which is probably the best if anyone wanted to play this game in a public place. Initially, I thought making a throwaway phone game cheapened the legacy of Trent Reznor's group a bit, but in 2008 it was possible that this was the future of music. The millions of fans who no longer bought albums because they pirated all of the band's music might be willing to pay money to play this game, which is honestly a far better model than our ad-supported data-stealing modern hellscape, but I digress. And certainly, they weren't the last group to offer their fans a chance to tap their way through their back catalogue. In the next few years, 9 Inch Nails Revenge will be joined by Christmas with Weezer, Tap Coldplay, and even Nirvana Revenge, which I'm pleased Kurt didn't live to see. Lady Gaga even released 2 sequels to her version. For a while, this seemed like the future of music, with forward-thinking artists like Björk even releasing entire albums as apps. Most of these games even featured artist news pages and links to their website, meaning new releases could be sold directly to consumers. But of course, apps ended up as one more tech blind alley, as social media and streaming meant that fans no longer had to engage with their favourite actor and remove, they were just a message away. This, combined with the high development costs of console games and the death of Flash games, seemed to spell the end of the Popstar cash-in game. However, an artist brand was only becoming more valuable, meaning artists started to appear as themselves or versions of themselves in other games. David Bowie led the way on this, providing music and playing multiple characters in 1999 game Omicron: The Nomad's Soul. This was followed by NSYNC and Busta Rhymes being playable in Celebrity Deathmatch in 2003, the same year in which Avril Lavigne and Christina Aguilera turn up in The Sims Superstar. The Sims quickly became the default place for pop stars to make video game appearances, with the Black Eyed Peas being a major part of the quote-unquote urban Sims game The Urbs, and Katy Perry getting her own Sims spin-offs. All the while, the internet was making massive multiplayer virtual worlds possible, with games like 2000's Habbo Hotel, 2003's Second Life, and 2005's Club Penguin allowing hundreds of thousands of people to explore their open worlds. As soon as you could get concert-sized crowds in these games, it was perhaps inevitable that you would start to get concerts in these games. The first Second Life gig, seemingly the first virtual concert by a major artist, was by Tom's Diner singer Suzanne Vega in 2006, featuring the uncanny sight of a CGI Vega sitting dead-eyed and still while her biggest hits played. By the 2010s, massive multiplayer games had grown exponentially in their scope, with games like Minecraft, Roblox and Fortnite some of the most important entertainment brands in the world. The few dozen who watched Vega over a decade prior had become millions of people who watched Marshmello become the first major act to hold a Fortnite concert in 2019. The following year saw Lil Nas X perform a concert in Roblox, while artists like Charlie XCX and 100 Gex performed in Minecraft. As part of the Marshmello promo, users also had a chance to spend their V-Bucks on a Marshmello skin. This was a dream for music industry marketers. Not only could you get users to advertise your artist by playing as them in a game with 200 million monthly players, but they would pay you for the privilege. No wonder then that major artists started offering player skins and other in-game merch. Artists like Bruno Mars, Travis Scott and Lady Gaga followed suit, as did most of the biggest bands of the age. At the time of writing this essay, Sabrina Carpenter is the most recent celebrity to offer herself up to players, as part of a digital promo strategy that also included a virtual concert. A cynic might say that this is late capitalism in action, with your faves not satisfied to bleed you dry with their concert tickets, virtual variants and merch, but also wanting to make you pay for merch that doesn't even exist. But seeing all these games together, there's not that much fundamental difference between playing as the Thompson twins looking for magic potion ingredients, and playing as Sabrina Carpenter chasing down other pop divas with a shotgun. The only difference is now your avatar actually looks like the idol you're playing, rather than a blocky, dead-eyed, flat-faced version of them from your nightmares. Both let young fans live one of their biggest dreams, allowing them to live however briefly as their favourite pop star. Pop music wouldn't be pop music if it wasn't always trying to make money by jumping on the latest trend, whether that's the trend for the twist in the early 60s or for the Call of Duty games, which Nicki Minaj appeared in 2023. And when the next generation of video games come along, pop stars are sure to be shamelessly cashing in again.
It's been great. See you soon. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to this Pop Star Lover's Guide to Pop Star Cash-In video games. If you want more of this kind of content, I've just done a membership video that's all about 50 Cent's Bulletproof, one of the oddest games of the mid-2000s. And visit my website for all the other ways that you can support this independent show if you love the 2000s and love pop music as much as I do.